Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back with my ranking of the Hellraiser films. So it's been a little while since my last ranking video where I ranked the Child's Play films. And I really enjoy doing these ranking videos, so I'm definitely going to be doing more in the future. But today I finally got around to watching Hellraiser Judgment, the last film I needed to see in the series, so now is no better time for me to rank the Hellraiser series. Just like my Child's Play ranking video, I'm going to start with my least favorite in the series and work my way up to my favorite. So coming in last place, my least favorite Hellraiser film is Hellraiser Hellworld. Now this was actually the 8th film in the series, and the last to star Doug Bradley as Pinhead. Now while he's definitely a horror icon, that's the only good thing I can say about this film, because I really didn't enjoy it all that much. I really didn't like the whole cyber storyline. It just didn't work for me. It was too silly. I don't remember the acting being too great in this one. It does star Lance Henriksen, which is really cool, so I guess that's another positive. But other than that, I just really didn't enjoy this one. With that being said, it's been a long time since I watched it. I actually only watched this one, I think, twice. And, the first time I watched it, I think, was the day this was released. So it was definitely a long time ago. I watched it again maybe a few months after that and haven't seen it since. So maybe I'm due for a rewatch in this one to give it, a third shot. Maybe third time's the charm on this one. But for now, Hellraiser Hellworld is my least favorite Hellraiser film. Next up is the movie that I know most people consider the worst entry in the Hellraiser franchise. But for me, I did enjoy it a bit more than I enjoyed Hellworld. So that's why I'm including it here. And it is Hellraiser Revelations. Now, I know a lot of people hate this film. I get it. It's the first one that didn't star Doug Bradley as Pinhead. You have the same actor playing a horror icon for 8 straight films, and then all of a sudden they change the actor portraying the character. Sort of like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, where a lot of people don't like, the new Freddy Krueger. But with that being said, this Pinhead is not as bad as people make it out to be. He's just not. He's not great by any means. He's not Doug Bradley, but he was never going to be. I feel like a lot of people went into this movie already hating it before they even saw it because, they knew Doug wasn't playing Pinhead, and that was sort of it for them. With that being said, I enjoyed it for what it was. And at a 75-minute runtime, it had great pacing. It went by very fast. It held my interest throughout the course of those 75 minutes. And it definitely felt like a Hellraiser film to me. So, next up on my list is Hellraiser Revelations, because I do enjoy it a bit more than Hellworld. Next is another film in the franchise that gets a lot more hate than it deserves. And it's Hellraiser Deader. Now, I know with this one, it wasn't originally intended to be a Hellraiser film. The Hellraiser concept was sort of added in later to kind of, make some money on it. It was originally going to be a movie called Deader. Kind of have, has a cult storyline. But there's some definitely some memorable scenes in this one. Particularly, that scene in the apartment or whatever when the main character, she walks in and she finds all the people with the, the lament configurations. The girl sitting on the toilet's kind of a creepy scene. I don't know, that always stuck out to me. It has a pretty decent ending in this one. Well done in certain aspects of the film. Again, not the best, and that's why it's fairly low on my ranking here. But with that being said, again, it gets a lot of hate that it doesn't necessarily deserve. It's decent. It's a decent film, and that's why I ranked it where I have. Now, this is where my ranking got a bit tricky, because I almost put another film in this spot. But, like my Child's Play video, nostalgia won out again. And I'm including Hellraiser Judgment here. Now, as I said, I watched this for the first time today, and I enjoyed it. At the beginning of the movie, not so much. I was thinking, it was looking like I wasn't going to like it too much. Even at the halfway point, I was almost, I never shut a movie off. I usually like to finish a movie. I don't care how bad it is. I kind of just like to see the whole thing through because you never know. Sometimes the end will at least redeem the movie for the most part. And that was definitely the case here. Up until the last half hour or so, I was really on the fence about it, not thinking I was going to enjoy it. But the last half hour to the last 20 minutes, I really enjoyed, and it really started to feel like a Hellraiser film, and the ending is really what did it for me. I'm not talking about the scene after the credits, but that last scene of Pinhead before the end credits. I don't want to give anything away here because it's the ending, but that scene really nailed it for me. I really enjoyed it. I have to say I was impressed with how they ended this. It was a nice little twist, I guess, and it almost makes you think for a second, like, wow, it's kind of an interesting concept. So I definitely enjoyed that, and that's what kind of made me put this film, higher on my list than I would have originally thought. Being the newest Hellraiser film, being a Hellraiser film not starring Doug Bradley. Again, different Pinhead, even from Hellraiser Revelations. I think he did a really good job. I do. He played the character well. There's some new characters in this one, some new Cenobites, if you will, and they were interesting as well. And I actually almost ranked this a bit higher, but as I said, nostalgia went out again, and I had to rank the other films higher than this one. But Hellraiser Judgment, definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet, even for the ending alone. And I'm curious what they're going to do with the franchise going forward. We're towards the middle of my ranking now, and next up is Hellraiser Inferno. Now this is the 5th film in the series, and I have to say I always enjoyed this one. Now, this one definitely has the least amount of screen time for Pinhead. I believe he's only in one scene. But it does have the Wire Twins, and they're pretty cool. This one stars Craig Sheffer, who you probably most know from Nightbreed or A River Runs Through It, and of course he's been in other stuff as well throughout the years. But yeah, this is a pretty good storyline. Kind of more of a a cop murder mystery type deal in a way. With the engineer character. Definitely not quite a Hellraiser film. Again, kind of like Deader, where the Hellraiser storyline was sort of added in after. Wasn't intended to be a Hellraiser film in the first place, and you can definitely tell in this one. But with that being said, it's a good movie overall, and even if it weren't a Hellraiser film, I think I'd still enjoy it. So, Hellraiser Inferno, next up on my ranking. On to the top 5 now. In 5th place is Hellraiser Hellseeker. Now, this is the 6th film in the series, and this one was actually a favorite of mine before. I actually really, really enjoyed this one. This probably would have been in my top 4, I guess you could say. So, it moved down one spot since a few years back when I would have ranked this differently. But this one does star Ashley Lawrence again, who of course plays Kirsty from the first 3 films. And yes, she was in Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, just that brief scene in the video, but she was in the first 3. It was great to see her back in this. This one also stars Dean Winters from Oz and Law & Order Special Victims Unit. So it's always cool to see him as well. He does those commercials that you probably see him in those too. But this was a good one. A good twist in this one with Kirsty. I like the Cenobite scenes in this. You had Chatterer in this one too. And, Pinhead has a good amount of screen time in this one. He doesn't have a ton of screen time like he does in Hellraiser 3. But that's kind of what worked in the first 2 Hellraiser films. You saw a little bit of him here and there, just enough to spike your interest. And that's what they did with his character in Hellseeker. So, at number 5, Hellraiser Hellseeker. Next up is an entry in the series that would have been a bit lower in my ranking had you asked me a few years ago. But over the years, I've really learned to appreciate this film. It's wacky, it's kind of cheesy in spots, but I actually really enjoy it now. So that's why it's number 4 in my ranking. And it is actually the 4th film in the series, Hellraiser Bloodline. Now, I've mentioned in other videos, I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, so I guess that's kind of what turned me off to this one a bit in the past. Sort of half the film takes place in the future, this kind of time shifts throughout the movie. And, the whole spaceship, that part of the storyline, that setting, it's usually not my thing. I'm not a big fan of Jason X and stuff like that, and movies that take place on spaceships. They're almost less scary to me just because, I'm not an astronaut or I'm not someone in space. So to me, it's not really relatable. I tend to appreciate things that are more relatable to me, I guess. I think we're all like that in some way. It's kind of like Jaws to me. I know a lot of people find the movie Jaws scary, but, my thinking with Jaws is if you're that terrified, just don't go in the water. But anyway, getting back to Hellraiser. Hellraiser Bloodline, again, 4th in the series. Also, technically the last in the series. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So, because of that, I actually enjoy it because I like the way this movie ends. There's a really powerful scene at the end with Pinhead, and if you've seen this movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. You know, his last line is pretty amazing, I guess. It just worked for me. The first time I watched it, I did really enjoy that. And as I said, I never really loved this one, but over the years, I've learned to appreciate it. So I'm including it here at number 4 on my Hellraiser ranking. We've reached the top 3 now, and not surprisingly, it's actually the first 3 Hellraiser films. But in what order? So coming in at number 3 is actually the third film in the series, Hellraiser III, Hell on Earth. I like this one. I like this one a lot. In fact, this was the first Hellraiser film I saw in theaters. This was the first Hellraiser film I was old enough to see in theaters. Because when the first 2 came out, I was, just very, very young. And, I remember seeing this. I actually, whenever I go to that same cinema, even now to this day, that cinema is still there. And whenever I go there, I always think about my experience seeing this movie in theaters. It's just one that always stuck out to me. Again, another one with the ending. I don't know why all the Hellraiser endings are sticking out to me, but the last shot in this movie was always a memorable one for me. And yeah, it's cheesy. It feels very 90s, and there's a lot of Pinhead in this one, which is a good thing, to an extent. But again, what worked in the first 2 films is that you had just enough of Pinhead to leave you wanting more. It really spiked your interest, whereas this one, you almost get too much of them. You almost get too much of the Cenobites in general. You get new Cenobites in this one. You kind of see a lot of them. It's a very fast-paced movie. There's a lot of action in this one. Some cheesy acting with JP or whatever, but I still enjoy it. Memorable scenes, as I said, and maybe it's a nostalgic factor for me since, as I said, I saw it in theaters. But I do love this film, and it's number 3 in my Hellraiser ranking. Now my top 2. I can go back and forth with these 2 all day long. It's pretty much one long movie if you watch them back to back. And just like my Child's Play video, you may be a bit surprised, but I'm actually going to put the original Hellraiser at number 2. It's a classic. I love this movie. I do. But as I stated, I also love Hellraiser 3. So I really love the top 3 in the series. And, the original film is just a classic, like I said. It's what started it all. It feels very much like a Clive Barker film because, of course, he directed it. And it's based on his book or his novella, The Hellbound Heart, which I also read. It's a very good read. A bit different than the movie. Some of the characters are different, but definitely worth a read. It'll take you maybe, half hour to read it too. It's a short novella. Really, really good book. I recommend that. But anyway, Hellraiser, yeah, it was great gore at the time. I remember this being like the goriest movie to me when I was younger. This was before I saw Dead Alive or anything like that. And this to me just really had the gore. I always loved this one. It's interesting, growing up, I always remembered, Pinhead being like the main villain in Hellraiser. And that's kind of always the way he was made out to be. And that's how the film was marketed. But it was really Julia, and Julia was the main villain in Hellraiser. And even a little bit in Hellbound, Hellraiser II, she was. But in Hellraiser, it really is Julia. It's this Julia and Frank relationship that's the key to this movie. And Pinhead is really just a minor character. So it's kind of funny. It's just funny how your mind works as a kid and growing up, how things change and how your perception changes about things. But anyway, number 2 in my Hellraiser ranking, Hellraiser. So here it is, my favorite Hellraiser film. You know what it is now. Hellbound, Hellraiser II. I absolutely love this movie. It is one of my favorite sequels of all time. And obviously a sequel that I actually prefer to the original. Not by much. They're very close. As I said, you can watch, Hellraiser and Hellbound back to back, and it's pretty much one long movie, and it just works. I also love this VHS cover art. I know it's simple. It's just a simple image of Pinhead standing next to the female Cenobite. But for nostalgic reasons, I rented this VHS so many times as a kid. This was probably my most rented VHS as a kid. Yeah, I know it probably sounds funny, a kid wanting to rent Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, but hey, I've been a horror fan since I can even remember. It worked apparently because, I am who I am, and it is what it is. But again, I always loved this VHS. I love the red on the side. I don't know. Again, it's nostalgia. You guys know how that works. But most of all, I always love the image on the back here of Pinhead and the female Cenobite dressed up as the surgeons. I always wondered as a kid why that scene wasn't included in the movie. I always thought I was missing it or something. And it wasn't until years later when, the internet was, finally a thing in every household, that I was able to research and find out that, the scene was never finished. And fortunately, all these years later now, I was finally able to watch it. It's included on the Arrow Scarlet box set, so that's cool. It was kind of something I could finally, put in the past. I had wanted to see it for so long, and it's definitely cool, definitely worth checking out. So if you have the Scarlet box set and you don't know what's on there, be sure to check that out, that surgeon scene. But anyway, a little about the film. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. The script pretty much sucks for it, to be honest, but I love it anyway. When Andrew Robinson dropped out and he decided he wasn't going to be Larry in this one, they kind of had to change things around, and you can really see it. It has no storyline. When you actually think about it and you look at the movie, there's really no point. Nothing really, transcends in this movie. Kirsty basically goes to hell for nothing. And that's it. I mean, she goes to hell to save who she thinks is her father, only to find out that it's not her father, and then spends the rest of the movie trying to get out of hell. So, again, there's no real storyline there. You have a good villain in Channard, Dr. Channard, but again, would he have been a problem had she not even gone to hell in the first place? It's kind of funny. But the setting is hell, so you can't go wrong there. I mean, what other movie has the setting of hell? It's pretty cool. I love the labyrinth. I love the music and the score in this movie. I love everything about it. So Hellbound, Hellraiser II is my favorite Hellraiser film. So there you have it, guys, my ranking of the Hellraiser series. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment below, let me know what you think about the films, and if you'd like to post a video response with your own ranking of the series, I'd love to check that out. I mentioned in my last video that I would be doing a Blu-ray update, but unfortunately there's about 2 feet of snow on the ground, so there was no mail delivery today. Hopefully they clear out the streets and I get what I was expecting in the mail tomorrow, and then I'll be able to film that video and post that Blu-ray update either tomorrow night or on Thursday. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.